I thought I'd never see her again. Then she knocked, holding a baby in her arms. The knock came just as I was packing away the last box of memories I had promised myself I would never open again. It wasn't loud, but somehow it echoed through every broken promise, every lonely night, and every silent tear I had buried over the years. When I opened the door, my heart stopped. Standing on my doorstep was the woman I had loved more than life itself, the woman who had disappeared without a single goodbye. But this time she wasn't alone. Cradled carefully in her trembling arms was a tiny baby, wrapped in a faded blue blanket. In that single moment, the life I had spent years trying to rebuild collapsed around me, and I realized some stories never truly end, they simply wait for the right moment to begin again. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and the power of second chances, please take a moment to like this video, comment below where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that touch the heart. For years I believed that some wounds never heal. I had spent every day convincing myself that moving forward was the only way to survive. Friends told me time would erase the pain, but time only taught me how to carry it without letting anyone notice. Every morning I woke before sunrise, worked long hours at the local repair shop, returned to an empty apartment, cooked simple meals, and fell asleep beside the silence that had become my closest companion. My neighbors knew me as the quiet man who always smiled politely but never stayed long enough to share his thoughts. None of them knew that every evening I looked at the old photograph hidden inside my drawer, wondering if somewhere in the world she was happy, safe, and still remembered my name. Emily had once been the brightest part of my life. We had met when neither of us had much to offer except hope. Together we dreamed about a small home with a garden, weekend road trips, and children whose laughter would fill every empty corner. We believed love could overcome anything. Then life proved us wrong. Financial struggles piled up, unexpected responsibilities arrived one after another, and pressure slowly turned our smiles into exhausted silence. One day she simply disappeared. There was no argument, no farewell letter, no explanation. Just an empty apartment and the unbearable question of why. I searched everywhere. I contacted friends, relatives, hospitals, and even places she had once mentioned wanting to visit. Weeks became months, and months became years. Eventually everyone told me to stop searching because people don't disappear without choosing to. Those words hurt more than the loneliness itself. As the years passed, I learned to exist instead of truly living. Birthdays meant nothing. Holidays became ordinary days. I stopped expecting miracles because disappointment had become too familiar. Yet deep inside me, there remained a tiny corner of hope that refused to die completely. Sometimes I imagined seeing her in crowded streets or hearing her voice carried by the wind. Each time reality reminded me she was gone, I quietly buried those dreams again. That rainy evening, when I opened the door and saw her standing there soaked from the storm, I almost believed I was imagining everything. She looked older, thinner, and far more fragile than the woman I remembered. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes, and the confident smile that had once made every room brighter had disappeared. The baby in her arms slept peacefully, unaware that two lives had just collided after years of separation. I noticed she wasn't wearing expensive clothes or carrying luggage. She looked like someone who had spent a long time running from something much bigger than herself. Before I could ask a single question, tears rolled down her cheeks. They were not the tears of someone asking for pity. They were the tears of someone who had carried unbearable guilt for far too long. As we sat inside, surrounded by dusty boxes and forgotten memories, the truth slowly unfolded. Shortly before she disappeared, she had received devastating medical news. Doctors believed she had a serious illness requiring immediate treatment. She had convinced herself that staying with me would only destroy the future we had dreamed about together. Already overwhelmed by debt and hardship, she couldn't bear the thought of becoming another burden. Fear made her believe leaving was an act of love. She vanished without explanation because she thought it would be easier for me to hate her than to watch her suffer. Life, however, had different plans. Later examinations revealed the diagnosis had been wrong, but by then shame had become stronger than hope. Every month that passed made returning seem more impossible. She worked different jobs in unfamiliar towns, trying to build a life from nothing while carrying the weight of regret. Along the way she met people who promised security but only brought more heartbreak. Eventually she became the guardian of a baby whose young mother, overwhelmed by illness and poverty, had passed away after begging Emily to protect the child. With no family willing to help, Emily honored that final promise even though she barely had enough to survive herself. Listening to her story, I felt anger rise inside me, but it wasn't the kind of anger I had expected all those years. I wasn't angry because she had left. I was angry because fear had convinced both of us that suffering should always be faced alone. How many lives are broken simply because people believe asking for help is a sign of weakness? How many beautiful futures disappear because silence seems easier than honesty? The baby woke gently and reached out with tiny fingers, completely unaware of the complicated history surrounding that small living room. I watched the innocent smile spread across the child's face, and something inside me shifted. That little life represented everything we had once dreamed about, even if the journey had been nothing like we imagined. The following weeks weren't easy. Forgiveness isn't something that appears overnight. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. There were difficult conversations, sleepless nights, and painful memories that refused to stay buried. Yet with every passing day, we discovered something unexpected. Healing doesn't erase the past. It simply teaches people how to walk beside it without letting it control tomorrow. The baby transformed the apartment that had once echoed with silence. Tiny toys appeared across the floor. Laughter replaced loneliness. Sleepless nights suddenly felt meaningful because they were filled with purpose instead of regret. My neighbors noticed the change before I did. They no longer saw the quiet man avoiding conversation. They saw someone carrying groceries with one arm while gently rocking a stroller with the other. They saw light returning to a face they had only known through sadness. Emily also began changing. The guilt that had bent her shoulders for years slowly lifted. She found steady work at a local community center helping struggling families, using her painful experiences to comfort others facing impossible situations. Every family she encouraged reminded her that hope grows strongest in places where people refuse to give up on one another. One afternoon I found the old photograph I had kept hidden for so many years. Instead of placing it back inside the drawer, I set it beside a brand new picture of the three of us sitting together in the park beneath golden autumn leaves. Looking at those photographs side by side, I realized something profound. One captured a dream waiting to happen. The other captured a dream that had survived heartbreak, loss, mistakes, and time itself. Life never became perfect. Bills still arrived. Challenges still appeared. There were moments when old fears returned unexpectedly. But now we faced them together instead of apart. That made all the difference. Love wasn't about pretending nothing painful had happened. Love was choosing each other despite everything that had happened. The child grew surrounded by stories not of abandonment but of courage, compassion, and redemption. We decided never to hide the truth. One day that little boy would understand that families aren't always connected by blood. Sometimes they are connected by promises kept when life becomes unimaginably difficult. Sometimes the strongest parents are those who choose love every single day, even after losing faith in themselves. Years later, whenever someone asked how our family began, I would smile quietly before remembering that unforgettable knock on the door. They always expected a simple answer. Instead, I thought about storms, forgiveness, lonely nights, impossible choices, and a tiny baby wrapped in a faded blue blanket who unknowingly gave two broken people a reason to believe again. If you've made it this far, here's a special request. comment below with the words, "Second chances still exist," if you believe hope can find us even after our darkest moments. As our story continued, I understood something I wish I had known years earlier. People often carry invisible battles that the world never sees. A smile can hide unbearable pain. Silence can hide endless love. Sometimes the person who walks away isn't trying to stop loving you. They're simply losing a battle they don't know how to explain. That's why kindness matters. That's why forgiveness changes lives. And that's why one unexpected knock on an ordinary evening became the greatest blessing I could have ever received. If this story touched your heart, please don't leave without liking this video, sharing it with someone who needs hope today, leaving your thoughts in the comments, and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps more emotional stories like this reach people who may be waiting for a reminder that even after heartbreak, life can still surprise us with beautiful new beginnings. Sometimes all it takes is one knock at the door to remind us that miracles don't always arrive when we expect them, but when they do, they can change everything forever.